Hey everyone, welcome to episode 6 of the Bathrooms and Bunkers podcast, powered by Lean Solutions Group. The Bathrooms and Bunkers podcast is dedicated to telling stories of excellence from incredible people around the globe. Today we're in Mishawaka, Indiana, just outside of South Bend and the University of Notre Dame, to talk with Jason Lippert, CEO of Lippert Components, the largest supplier of RV parts in the country. Jason, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Great to be here, Trey.
So you now run Lippert Components. It's a family business. I want to hear a little bit about your childhood. You grew up in Michigan, somehow got down here. Tell me a little bit about Lippert and how it got started.
Yeah, so we're publicly traded today, but we started out as a family business. My grandfather started the company in '56. He had just come back from World War II and started at Redmond Homes, which was a manufactured housing builder in central Michigan, where my family's all originally from. And he worked on the roof line for a while and realized after a short period of time that he could make the roofs. So he found an investor, because he didn't have any money, and started building metal roofs for manufactured housing. And that's kind of how the company got its start.
And then it transitioned. I think your dad took over at some point, and then you, and somehow got into like RV accessories. And we talked about that. We both have an RV. Yeah, half the components on my RV are from Lippert.
Yeah, well, that took a long time to get to that point. But so my dad took over in '79 and ran the company effectively until he sold it in 1997 to the public entity, which at the time was Drew Industries, publicly held and traded company. I came to the company in 1994 and started welding. I welded for a couple of years just to learn the business from the ground up. My dad insisted that I do that, and it was the best decision. I guess I didn't actually make that decision, but it was the best thing he ever did for me, was put me there to kind of learn the business from the ground up, get to know what people go through on the front lines of a manufacturing business day in and day out. And then from there, just, grew into leadership, and ultimately got an opportunity to infuse RVs into our vision and our footprint. And kind of RVs kind of took over, what we were doing and became the biggest piece of our business. So.
And how many jobs have you had within the company starting in that welding position?
Too many to count, but a lot of manufacturing, leadership jobs.
And then you've been CEO for almost 20 years, and I have to say, you don't look old enough to have been a CEO for 20 years.
Well, thank you.
So
that's great.
You probably started when you were 17, 18 at that point, or what?
Unfortunately not. I actually started interning for the business as a sophomore in college. Did a couple internships, and then my last internship was in the weld shop on a second shift, welding manufactured housing chassis, and then came back after I graduated and started, continued the welding training program and management training program, and then got into management after that and started running some facilities, and then ultimately started the RV business.
When did you realize that leadership was where you were headed, that you had potential to be a leader and eventually take over the company?
It all happened so organically. It never was something that dawned on me until my dad had told me, hey, look, you're going a different direction. You really, believe in this RV thing. And, his plan was to sell the company to a public entity that just had more of an unlimited resource of capital to give toward a vision like this. Because as a smaller family company, it wouldn't have been something that we would have put a ton of money toward. I was 23 or 24 at the time, and I mean, my son's only 13 years old, but when he's 23, I'm not giving him a ton of capital to start a business. We're going to start slow. But we're fortunate enough to sell to a really good publicly traded company that believed in our vision and gave us all sorts of capital to put up plants and buy some small companies and really put this nice RV business together, and then just kind of fell into leadership along the way.
So today you're at a dinner party and you tell somebody that you're CEO of Lippert Components, and they say, "What is Lippert Components?" What do you say?
I say we're the leading component supplier and manufacturer for recreational businesses and leisure businesses. So transportation markets for that matter. So the RVs, the boats, the marine business, here and abroad, the aftermarket businesses. I mean, that's kind of in a nutshell, the 80-20 of our business.
Awesome. So I want to move into a segment called Difference Makers and talk about some of the people that have helped shape you as a leader. It sounds like your dad was instrumental in that. Who are some of the other leaders that have really had an impact on you in growing as a leader?
Yeah, certainly my dad and my family. I've been around a lot of great leaders. I mean, as I was coming up into the business, there were a lot of our customers that latched onto me real quick because they saw that we were wanting to do bigger and better things for them, and they wanted to help us. So had a lot of good, strong mentors in and around our customer base. Back in college, I started started getting leadership opportunities inside our fraternity and around the Greek Interfraternity Council, and kind of really got some opportunities there thanks to a mentor on that side. And I think the more you experiment with leadership, the more you realize whether it's something you want to do or not. And I quickly realized I was really interested in that kind of stuff.
Yeah. What was the situation that occurred either during that time in college or as you became CEO and started leading the company? What's the situation that really rocked your world and kind of caused you to go, I need to keep growing, or this taught me a ton about leadership?
Yeah, so I mean, every crisis we've been through, and we've been through 4 or 5 since the mid '90s, when I've been in some capacity of leadership type position. The crisis management, and just how you lead through the crisis, and the people you're leading with through a crisis, really, I think, help shape you more. And we're going through one of those periods right now. It's been a little bit longer than most, but I've got a ton of other people in our business that I'm going through it with, and it makes it almost more fun. There's lots of challenges. There's endless challenges right now, and to go through these leadership opportunities and challenges with other people that are trying to grow and develop as leaders themselves has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you supply a huge part of the RV industry market, which happens to be right real close by. A lot of the major RV manufacturers are right here, and the supply chain's got to be a huge issue right now in terms of getting parts and getting things delivered. Is that one of the crises that you guys are going through?
Yeah, it's largely getting materials domestically, getting materials from abroad. All the freight challenges. There's lots of labor challenges. It's just about everything that you would normally have to manage in business that is somewhat normally consistent is very volatile right now. So and then when you have 4 or 5 of these things all bouncing around at the same time, it makes it really challenging.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Now you get a chance to speak quite a bit on leadership. It seems like you have opportunities to do that. First of all, when did that start, where you wanted to start to impact people or influence people as a leader? And what's like the best advice that you give to people when you get an audience?
Yeah, so I mean, we've been on a culture journey a leadership journey for about 9 years. We kind of pivoted in 2012 and decided that we needed to have values, we needed to be consistent. And, we had some light bulb moments around different leaders around the company, and we just said, hey, look, we need to focus on building up leaders and our culture versus constantly chasing the numbers and the growth that we were so accustomed to over the years. We've had a stark focus on values, stark focus on improving our culture, and what does that mean, and then building up leaders, and a lot of that revolves around leadership coaching and training, and not just training through HR, but really innovating in the world of culture and leadership, and creating people that are dedicated to improving the culture and improving and building up and developing our leaders, which we have separate departments for in our business.
What happened in 2012 that caused that pivot? Was there a moment or anything that happened that you said, this is really important?
Yeah, there were lots of. I mean, there were a bunch of different things, but for me personally, and I think several leaders were going through some of the same thing. But for me personally, it was at that point in time, we had been through 15 or so years of just crazy organic growth, and we were making lots of acquisitions, and for me it was just almost a decade and a half into my leadership journey. It's the same thing over and over again, more numbers, bigger numbers. So I started looking out and saying, okay, well, when's enough, and is growth all there is? And I went. It was a lot of prayer for me, and just saying, God, there's got to be more than just more revenues, and bigger, more stock price, and thousands of more people coming to our business and becoming part of the team. And the answer came, and just, hey, look, you've got today we've got 14,000 team members, and it's what are you doing with those lives and their families. So we really started to think about things in terms of how we're impacting our team members and their families at that point in time. And the minute we did that, the minute we pivoted and started focusing on values and being consistent and how we were going to impact and transform lives inside the business for the 40 or 50 hours we have people, that was kind of the big light bulb moment that kind of changed everybody's trajectory in our business.
So did you guys start to create your own leadership management program? Did you go out and try to find one that was kind of pre-packaged, or how did that evolution happen to be able to work with those leaders?
Yeah, it was really easy for us. We about that same time, we decided we were going to come up with some core values that we were going to live by, and hold everybody accountable to those values. And we just developed our leadership curriculum on those values. We'd evaluate people on the values for their quarterly or their monthly reviews. We talked about them every day. We brought the values into our morning huddles and our 5-minute meetings, and just made the values so we were talking about them all day long, not just putting it on the wall and maybe it was a talking point sometimes. So, and then we eventually came up with leadership values. So we said, if you're going to lead in our company and you're going to lead people, then you need to adhere to an extra set of values. So we have 5 core values, 5 leadership values, and all of our curriculum is just based on, hey, look, we can, you can define leadership 1,000 different ways, but we're simplifying it and saying, hey, look, it's these 10 things, and we got to do these 10 things well, and if we do, we'll be 95% of the way there, and that's good enough for us. We can make leadership confusing sometimes by reading 1,000 different books and different principles and different thought leaders in leadership, but we're just like, let's keep it simple and keep it to core values and our leadership values and just keep focusing on that.
Yeah, I noticed during the factory tour that I had the chance to take that those values are on banners, they're hanging. There's also the kind of the scoreboards that attribute to those values as well. So it's clearly a part of every facet of the business where you guys are holding people accountable and helping people grow.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. And this led to also, there's a purpose summit coming up that I believe Lippert is hosting or putting on this spring, in spring of 2022, at nearby Notre Dame University. Yeah. Or University of Notre Dame. I'm not sure which way you say it.
Yeah.
So tell me a little about what led to that. There's going to be several speakers, a lot of attendees. What's the purpose of that purpose summit?
Yeah, so to back up just a little bit, one of the things that we've done around leadership that might be a little bit different and innovative compared to other companies is, we've got 10 leadership coaches in the business that do nothing but coach up our frontline leaders and teach them what our leadership and our core values actually mean and how to live that out as a leader in the business and how you can impact and transform the lives of the teammates, that those people are leading day in and day out. And then we've got personal development coaches too that sit on the leadership team because not everybody's issues are leadership driven or core values driven. People have personal crisis all the time, but the typical line people get when they walk into the business is leave your personal baggage at the door and come in and get to work and get home. So you can't really separate from your personal life. So people struggle with that crisis for 40 or 50 hours a week and just bottle it up. So we carve out space and people resources in the business so that people can have somebody to talk to about that kind of stuff. Because we found that when they get some of that sorted out and they feel more comfortable, they're actually better, and more productive because they're not, they don't have their mind on all the other stuff all day long. They've got space and time and people to talk about it with. So, the Purpose Summit came to be with this core team of 20 people and the leader there, Ember Selking, who's our VP of Culture and Leadership, working with those guys and really having some interesting content. We had some people go there and speak at the summit this past year when they had it. So I think that they just, they said, hey, look, we're doing a lot of things. And I think Davin saw that we were doing a lot of the great things. And he's been here a few times, so he knows what's going on behind the 4 walls here. And they just decided that, hey, look, let's do it in Lippert's backyard. And Notre Dame makes a great venue, and just make it great.
So you guys truly put your money where your mouth is. You have leadership coaches on staff.
Yeah.
Which is remarkable because I think a lot of companies, they say they want to grow leaders, they want to do that, but a lot of times they don't devote resources to it.
And that's what I tell them. It's like, people say, hey, look, what are you doing? How are you doing it? Here's what we're doing. I'm like, okay, well, just tell me what resources you have dedicated to leadership and culture. I don't want to hear that it's part of your HR responsibilities or part of the general managers or the president or the CEOs. It's everybody's responsibility, but what resources do you have that are carved out, that are dedicated, because that tells me that you're serious and that you're willing to work at it. Because we've tried a lot of things, but that's the only thing that tells our people we're serious about it, because we've carved out resources for them, and they don't. Our general managers and plant managers and all of our manufacturing leads and anybody that carries a leadership title in our company, they've got a full-time job. To go and coach somebody on a regular basis requires separate resources. So we've put the stake in the ground, and we're doing that. And I've, when you talk about, what I've done when I go out and speak to other leaders and whoever I'm speaking to, that's the thing I'm telling people is if you want to make a difference and put a stake in the ground and tell your people or the community or whoever your audience is that you're serious about developing leaders in a meaningful way, you've got to have the dedicated resources. And that means hiring a leadership coach. Just start with one, and if it doesn't work, you can, move that person, down the road or find another place for them inside the company, but just try it. And I can guarantee you that 1 leads to 2, leads to 4, leads to 8 if you're big enough. So anyway.
Yeah, certainly you can never have too many leaders in a company or people moving towards leadership, which is awesome. So I want to transition to a segment called The Secret Sauce. And this is more geared around you as a CEO. Obviously, you have a lot of stresses and tension and a lot of requests on your time. What are some things that you do? Like, what are some hobbies that you do to try to get away or to unplug a little bit? What do you like to do when you're not here, growing Lippert?
Well, when I leave here and unplug, I go home and I plug in. I've got 4 relatively young kids, so I'm busy chasing them around when I get home. And there's always a backyard ball game or something going on, or a sporting event or kid sporting event, or we're going to a Notre Dame basketball game or a football game or a lacrosse game or a soccer game. So I'm just busy with my kids that's kind of my hobby.
So you get to drive home basically to unplug, and then it's right back in pretty much.
Yeah, it's a different kind of work, but it's a lot of fun. I enjoy it.
Are you a night owl by nature, or are you an early bird?
I am definitely an early bird. I mean, when I was working in the factories all those years, even when I was a manager of the factories, I mean, work starts early, and so I've always been to work by 6 a.m. I still am today, and I'm out by 5:15 to see my family and my kids, and I go to bed at reasonable time.
Yeah,
not too late, not too early.
Sleep when you retire.
Yeah, that's right. There's too much to do. There's too much to do.
So what's one habit that you feel has really led you to be successful?
Oh, just one? I mean,
you can do as many as you want.
Yeah. Well, I mean, first and foremost is just, my faith life. So I've got a pretty solid routine there, and, lean on God to take the wheel. And I try not to worry too much, because there's bigger plans, and our influence and impact we're trying to have in people's lives through leadership and culture, and ultimately telling the rest of the world about that is really important and huge. Nothing I ever thought we'd be spending time on when I was, in my younger leadership years. So that's one thing. But part of it is just, it's really just getting back to our values. And we sat 20 of us in a room and said, what are things that we could be really proud of to have as our values? And we let all 20 of our top executive leaders in the company throw their ideas on the board, and we all voted 5 times, and those are what's sitting on our core values cards today. So, just living, to those values have shaped our success, and, our success as leaders. And I find that good things keep happening if we live all those good values out. And certainly all the things we're doing to help mentor, businesses not only around here, because a lot of them are curious what we're doing, but around the country that kind of see what we're doing through social media and hear all the stories of impact. I mean, it's been fun, mentoring and helping a lot of companies out that are just asking the question, okay, where do we start? Where do we start with, moving the needle on leadership? Where do we start with changing our culture and putting the stake in the ground? So,
do you like to read books, or do you prefer to listen to podcasts, or neither?
I much prefer listening to podcasts, but if I get a good enough recommendation on a book, I'll spend time.
What podcasts are you listening to that helps out? Is it for fun, or is it for growth, or?
Yeah, so it's the biggest one is part of my faith routine in the morning is Rick Warren, Daily Hope. So he wrote The Purpose-Driven Life, and pastor of Saddleback Church out on the West Coast, and I've been listening to that for a long time, and there's just so much wisdom in those podcasts. I always take something away, but that's part of it.
How do you balance faith and business? Sometimes people struggle with that, with the compatibility or getting them to mesh. How do you tackle that?
Yeah, I'm just I'm not apologetic about it. unapologetic about it. It's just I don't lead with it, but there's always times where things come up, and there's good times and not so good times to bring that up. But I try to live those values out, and what I learned from the Word, I try to apply in my life, and usually people will notice that, hey, that's something I want to aspire to, and if people ever want to sit down and talk about it, I will.
Yeah, that's cool, because I think that's a challenge, but it sounds like you've navigated those waters pretty well.
Yeah, it's a challenge. I mean, we have people that have taken leads on daily devotionals in the company, and that's how. I mean, there's 600 people on that list that have requested just to be part of a daily devotional that one of our leadership coaches actually runs, and we're kind of moving him into a chaplain type program. But we've got all sorts of resources. That goes for anything across the company. If our people have needs, I think we're listening more than ever today, and we'll try to find ways to fill those gaps for our team members.
All right, I want to move into another segment called the Quick 10. So I'm going to ask 10 questions. First thing that pops in your mind, just really short answers. We'll have a little bit of fun with this. What is one thing that is on your bucket list?
Oh, bucket list. I love to travel. I'd love to hit 5 or 6 countries and take 6 weeks or 3 months off and do that.
Any in particular, Europe or Australia?
Yeah, there's a lot of places in Europe I haven't been. I'd like to go to Australia, but that's not first on my list. But I'd like to hop around and see new places and just experience different cultures.
Hop on the train, go country to country, kind of thing. Yeah, very cool. What do you collect? Are you a collector? Is there anything that you enjoy collecting?
No, I collected football and baseball cards as a kid, but that was a long time ago.
Do you still have them? What's your best baseball card?
I gave them to my brother a long time ago.
So he's got them all.
And he didn't give me any money when he sold them, so
he got the better end of that deal.
Yeah.
Okay, Ford, Chevy, or something else?
Oh, I'm not a car guy.
Not at all, huh?
No.
Sports car or truck then? What do you prefer?
I've been driving an SUV forever just because it fits all the kids. That's the only prerequisite is you got to have 6 seats.
That's right, and it's cooler than a minivan.
And it's cooler than a minivan. I did the minivan though. I did that for a while.
Yeah, we've rocked that for a while. We only have 2 kids, so we've rocked that for a long time. But if we had more, we'd probably upgrade to an SUV.
Right.
How about go-to ice cream flavor? You take the kids out for ice cream. What's your go-to ice cream flavor?
I'm like chocolate chip milkshake.
That's what I'm talking about. Yes, milkshake. Those kind of get left out sometimes when you go to the ice cream shop. So that's the way to go. Mm-hmm. So this might be a leading question because we know you have an RV, but would you rather drive on a vacation with your family or would you rather fly somewhere and have vacation?
Can you specify if this is like during COVID or after post-COVID?
Let's say 2 years from now. What are you guys doing?
Yeah, Look, I think they're both. I mean, there's some places I just would never go in an RV, but we took an RV trip, as I was telling you before we started this, out west, and it was one of the most memorable trips. I mean, I'd love to do another one, and we maybe go to southern Utah and hit a lot of the great national parks in Utah because there's a lot of them there. But I could do both.
Yeah, it's nice to show kids like history where it happened and all these cool things that you don't see when you fly over. Driving's a whole new experience.
Yeah, it is.
A whole different experience.
It is. So, it was great.
All right, so you can go to one sporting event every year for the rest of your life. What's that sporting event?
Notre Dame football game.
Did you go to Notre Dame or just because you're local?
No, just because I'm local. My kids have grown up here, so they're diehard Notre Dame fans, and I tend to fall in love with whatever they love. So, and they love Notre Dame.
And what's the one game? Is there one rival that you would want to see every year, or just any game, at least one game a year?
For my boys, I mean. They like to win big, so it'd probably just have to be somebody that they could play
early in season, non-conference, or somebody,
exactly.
Some nobody, some knockoff. So it'd be
exactly.
Good. Do you have a favorite quote? What's your favorite quote that you kind of hold on to?
Oh, gosh, I think that I've heard a million definitions of leadership, but the simplest one and the one I love the most is just that leaders lift people up. They build people up. They encourage people. I mean, it's just anything along those lines. It's just, and that's really kind of what we've been focused on with all of our leadership development. It's just help people realize what being a leader means. It doesn't mean being in charge. It just means being, taking care of the people in your charge. Like
it means you work for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's counting on you. You work for a lot of people to make sure they're successful.
Yeah.
Okay, music. We'll turn to music. 70s rock, 80s pop, or 90s rap? What do you prefer? If you have those 3 choices.
Give them to me again.
70s rock, 80s pop, 90s rap.
It's definitely not 90s rap, so I'd have to go with 80s.
80s, there you go. I'm a child of the 80s, so I'm with you on that for sure. Best book that you've read on leadership, one that you either quote a lot or you come back to a lot that really had a big impact.
Yeah, so two of the big ones that have had the biggest impact on me are, Lead Like Jesus, and the other one is Everybody Matters, and it was more of a business culture book, How to Do Business Culture Right by Bob Chapman, but it had a ton of leadership stories in there that just flipped the light bulb on for me in a big way.
All right, last question. We're about done.
That's
Who's
right.
one person that you would like to meet? Just one person that you're really hoping that someday you get to shake hands with and talk with them for a little bit.
Yeah, that's a good one. I am generally not a starstruck type guy, but oh man, I'd like to meet Rick Warren someday.
There you go.
Yeah, that'd be one that I wasn't prepared to answer the question, but that's my best answer.
Tell them thank you for all the devotions.
That's right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, we're going to end this segment with the final one, which is basically the next chapter. Where are you going from here? Like, what are some of the goals that you have for yourself in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, so I'll tell you probably, if you've followed our company a little bit, we always talk about business being a force for good. It can be a force for good, and we say that because, through building leaders and the impact leaders can have on people, we can really, change the statistic where 88% of the people in the country feel like they work for a company that doesn't care about them. And if we flip that over and 88% of the people in the country feel like they do work for a company that cares about them, it can be world changing. Because part of the reason we have such a, screwed up world right now is, we believe and that business kind of creates a lot of that by beating on people in the workforce to get at the numbers, and they leave work frustrated, not feeling cared for, not feeling recognized and appreciated for the work that they do every day, day in and day out, year in and year out, and we feel like we can really move the needle and so that's what we're trying to do. I mean, the next 3 to 5 years is teaching people that through good leadership and some of the things that we're doing through good culture change, we can really move the needle on how people feel cared about. And if they go home feeling cared about, how does that transform the family? How do you impact the kids if you go home in a real negative light because you've been beat up all day or all week or over the last 20 years from the business that you're working at? And I've talked to those people, and it's really, really a sad story in a lot of cases. Some of them that have come here and only been here, a month or a couple months, start crying when they talk about how much, how horrible it was, the last 10 or 20 years that were at their job and just felt trapped, but they needed to make a living and they didn't want to let their family down and they just stayed. They didn't realize what it could look like. So our hope is just to, show this model of leadership, show what culture could look like and how it can be transformative for people, and just teach that to anybody who's willing to listen. There's enough companies out there that are turning the ear where we had to create a leadership academy that would just help and separate staff to help mentor companies that just wanted to know how and where to start. So we're doing that. We're working with about 50 companies right now. And that's enough. We used to think that, man, if we could do this internally at Lippert with 14,000 team members, we could move the needle and make a big difference in the world. But if we can get, hundreds or maybe thousands someday, if we're looking out 10, 20, 30 years, hundreds or thousands of other companies to move on how they approach culture and leadership and how that can impact and transform lives with their people in the business, that, we can have a pretty substantial impact.
Yeah, I love that, because most people spend more than half of their day, their awake day, at work, and almost as about half of their week at work. So that's really important. So.
Yeah, so it's like let's teach people how to use that time to impact people positively, so they go home feeling filled up and ready to make a difference when they walk out the door, not ready to kick the dog.
My next question was going to ask about the legacy you want to leave, but I think you just answered it.
So
let's finish with this. How can people who are watching this podcast, listening to this podcast, follow you and what you guys are up to?
Yeah, so we're all over social media, and we do post a lot of stuff around culture and leadership. I only have LinkedIn, so my social media is limited to LinkedIn. I try to post as much culture and leadership content as I can. And then the other piece would be the Leadership Academy. You can go to our website and find the Leadership Academy or a link to it, and we have a whole staff dedicated to help. And I'm taking calls. I'm getting involved with some of those calls. I'll get involved and help some, business owners or CEOs or presidents of companies that just really want to figure out how to get that journey started. And we want to help people get started because it makes a big difference in the world.
Well, Jason, thanks so much for your time today. It's a pleasure having you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks again for joining us for another episode of the Bathrooms and Bunkers podcast powered by Lean Solutions Group. And remember, excellence is in you, so let it out.